Innovative content. Global audience.
Hello, people. Welcome to a special edition of World of Cinema with Daddy KRIS today. Normally, I don't present this show. It's something, with Princess, but I'm taking it on today because I have a special guest. Well, so many things are special about this lady. Wow. Okay, when you look at her skin, she's white. Yes, she is white. And yes, she's American, but she's also Nigerian. I'm going to start with her name. Her name is Dr. Talatu CARMEN McCAIN. Now, this is the combination. Talatu is an Hausa name. She's going to tell us what that means. Of course, Carmen, as you all know, is American, and she actually speaks Hausa more than me. For many of you there, if you think you can speak Hausa, come down, let's do it, right? And she's right here with me, and she's a senior lecturer at the University of London. She teaches a lot, and I know she does African cinema. She teaches cinema, right? And today I'm going to look at that. And in the process, we'll be looking at Nollywood, what Nollywood has gone for us from our point of view, and also Kannywood, because she's been very close to the Hausa language, and she has really done a lot. So we'll be looking at all that together. Really, I can't say thank you, welcome to the show, Carmen. Let's start with Talatu. Talatu. Where did that come from? It's strange, to have an American, beautiful young lady answering an Hausa name. How? When is that? How does it all get started?
Well, I was living in Jos at the time, and I had taken Hausa when I was in secondary school, but at that time I was post-university, and I was taking some classes. And so
what was that?
It was in Jos.
In Jos?
In Jos, yeah.
Wow.
So I was taking some classes, and my teacher was like, "What's your Hausa name? What Hausa name do you want?" And I was like, "I don't know." He says, "Okay, when were you born?"
Yeah.
And I said, "I think it was a Tuesday." So he said, "Okay, you're Talatu, which means born on a Tuesday."
Okay,
so,
let's start from there. So that's interesting. I like this is what happened to Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela said he went to school. Of course, his parents were not educated. So he went to this school, and the teacher said, "What's your name?" And he was calling this long South African name. I said, "No. Okay, from now you are Nelson." So that is how the Nelson started. Your case now, somebody named you Talatu because somebody born on Tuesday. So if you don't understand Hausa and you're watching this show today, you must understand the meaning of Talatu. That is the easiest thing. That is a big game because I've gotten that already. When you're born on Tuesday, you are Talatu. Well done. So, okay. So tell us more. So how from Talatu in school?
So my family came to Nigeria in 1988, when I was 11. So you can do the math on that. But so we moved to Port Harcourt. My dad was a lecturer at University of Science and Technology in Port Harcourt. And we were there for 3 years, and then we moved up to the University of Jos. And so my dad is still there. He's a professor now.
Is he still in Nigeria?
He's still in Nigeria. Yeah. In fact, he just arrived back today from a trip. So
he's back in Nigeria today?
He's back in Jos, yes.
Okay. So, hey, for those of you running away from Nigeria, there's Talatu's parents still in Nigeria. Okay, that's a good, we'll come to all that later. So Talatu, wow. So your parents are still in Jos. Let me ask, are you one in the family? Do you have more siblings?
There are three of us. So I have a brother who lives in Lagos, and a sister who's based in the US.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's quite interesting because there's going to be very, very... listen, now you are different. You are different, And I don't know why to thank you because many people don't want to associate with us. They say Nigerians were criminals, we're that. It's all bad names that associate with us. I'm so proud. I'm so happy. I feel relieved when I see someone like you saying, "Hey, I am an Hausa girl. I am this." And your dressing. Hey, I don't need to speak it alone. Look at the way she dressed. It speaks volume. And how did you manage to get into this culture that you are now associating with? That's quite...
But, I think language did a lot because I grew up in Jos. At least my teenage years were in Jos. And we went to an international school. Okay. So whenever I would hear people speak Hausa, I just felt kind of left out. I felt like we were living on the surface of things.
Of course.
I went to Hillcrest School in Jos,
Okay.
which is an international school. So there are lots of Nigerians, but at that time there were also lots of
Foreigners.
Americans and Indians and Lebanese and so on. But I went back to the US and I did university in the US, but then, and I lived in New York for a couple of years.
Okay. New York
But I
is-
just really felt like I wanted to come back and experience Nigeria as an adult
Yes.
and kind of figure out who I was in relation to Nigeria, not just at being at
Yes.
an international school. So I went back then, and then I became involved with the Association of Nigerian Authors in Jos.
Okay.
And then I decided I wanted to do my PhD on African literature.
Wow.
And so I went back to the US, to the University of Wisconsin-Madison, but then I ran away from there. It's very cold, and I didn't like Wisconsin
Really?
very much. So.
Because you're born in Nigeria. Look at this one girl. It's too cold because she grew up in the hot weather. No.
So I did what I had to do at Wisconsin. I did the coursework, I did the exams and so on, and then I ran back to Nigeria in 2000. And I went back a couple of times when I was in Wisconsin for a few summers. So I went to Sokoto, and that's where my Hausa got much better.
Okay.
Because the reason I started studying Hausa again, I already spoke some from Jos.
Yes.
I knew Anakana,
The basic,
the greetings,
Yes.
Yawanawani market Hausa. But my PhD program at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, at that time it was called the Department of African Languages and Literature.
Okay.
It's since been changed to the Department of African Cultural Studies.
Okay. From language to literature.
Yeah. So one of the requirements of the program was that you had to be able to speak an African language. And I was like, oh, I already speak some Hausa. Let me just continue. I'll just get the requirement out of the way. I wasn't really taking the language as something very important. I was wanting to write about like English language, Nigerian literature, which, from Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie onwards, there's a huge flourishing of literature in English. And so at that time, it was still, this new literature was still quite new. And so I wanted to write about that. But I was like, okay, let me just study the Hausa, get the requirement out of the way. I already know some, so it will be easy.
Yeah.
And I can get a scholarship to go back to Nigeria for the language, but really I'll be, doing my other thing.
Yes.
But I went to Sokoto, and I had a Professor Malami Buba, who had been at SOAS actually for many years. And then he'd gone back to Usman Danfodio University at Sokoto, and then started on his own, just like a little study abroad program, because he had experience with SOAS. He knew students who went back and forth. And so he was like, let me, teach students Hausa. So we would go stay in his house, and he like gives you individualized tutoring and teaching. His family came in, his brothers and sisters came in and helped,
Yes.
teaching. And so part of the teaching that he did, he was an excellent teacher. And he said, why don't you watch these Hausa films?
Good.
Because that will help you with
Just
your
speak more. Yeah.
I knew at that time,
Yeah.
they don't have these anymore, but the rental shops where you go get a VCD, you
Yes,
rent
the
it for,
VCD, yeah.
I don't know, 15 naira. or
Yes,
something.
that's
I don't
right.
even remember how much it was
It was
at that
50
time.
naira. It was
So
like
I
150.
was doing that, and then he was also having me read Hausa novels. And I don't know how much of your audience knows there's a huge amount of Hausa literature. There are thousands and thousands of novels
written
in Hausa.
in Hausa.
Yeah. So he was just
Whoa.
having me read them just to help me with my language skills. But the stories were very good, so I fell in love
With the
with
story.
the literature, and then I fell in love with the Kannywood films,
Yes.
the Hausa films. And so it wasn't then just a language
No,
learning
no,
opportunity for
language.
me, but I was like, Kai,
Drawn into the
why,
story.
I grew up in Nigeria. I've
Yeah.
spent all this time with the Association of Nigerian Authors in Jos. Why hadn't I heard anything about Hausa literature or film? So I was like, well, other people can write about English language
Yes.
literature. There's a lot of it. There are plenty of people who want to write about it, but let me focus on the Hausa language. So
Wow.
that's how I ended up getting into studying Hausa language literature and film.
Wow.
So that was just in the summers when I was in Wisconsin.
Okay.
So I ended up, completely changing what I was planning to do.
Yes.
So that was 2005. I went for the language training.
Mm-hmm.
2006, I got a fellowship to go to Kano for a couple of months.
Okay.
And then at the end of the trip in 2005, Malami Buba my professor from Sokoto had taken me to Kano because he knew, one of the books I read was called Indasoda Kauna, which is like kind of with love and devotion. Indasoda Kauna. It's one of the best-selling Hausa novels ever.
Wow.
So I think it's sold over 300,000 copies. It was by Ado Ahmedin Dabino, and it's just a simple love story.
Yes.
Star-crossed lover, a rich girl, a poor boy.
Yes.
They meet. They start exchanging letters from secondary school. They fall in love, but then the rich girl's grandmother, she doesn't want her to marry a poor boy. So then she takes a bride from a rich suitor, and the rich suitor they arrange the marriage between them. But a lot of times these Hausa novels were published in parts because you would buy one, you would get books, and then you had to buy the other one.
Yeah, I like that.
So,
that's how we do it in the movies too.
Yeah, exactly. So by this anyway, it was a nice story, but she's in this arranged marriage. So at the end of part 1, she goes and jumps in a well.
Okay.
So that's the end of it. It's like a cliffhanger.
Yes.
But in part 2.
Yes.
She doesn't die when she falls in the well.
Oh, right.
So she's brought out, and then Muhammad, her boyfriend, gives her a blood transfusion. So now his blood is in her body. Her parents can't. The second
wonderful.
It's like you go down into the well, and then you come up out of the well, and so by the end there. It's just it's a very simple story, but the way he writes it, the dialogue is so the banter.
And all this is in Hausa.
It's in Hausa, yeah. So it's beautiful Hausa. It's just like I liked the story, but the language and the dialogue and the conversation was the best part. So that I just really fell in love with that. And my teacher knew that, so he took me to Kano from Sokoto, and I met Ado Hamegida Dabino. I met
the writer,
Professor Abdallah Oba Adam, who's probably the foremost scholar of Hausa popular culture. So I met some really important people then. So then in 2006, I came back, and I was mostly going to Association of Nigerian Author meetings, but in Kano, the Hausa language film industry is very closely tied to the literary industry, and that's happening in Nollywood now. But at the beginning, it was they weren't making too many Nigerian novels into movies. Now they're starting to do it with Death and the King's Horseman and Half of Your Son, and there's actually quite a few people.
Have you been able to make this very one into a film?
Which one? In the Soda Company?
Yeah.
Yes or no? The funny thing is, the author, when he wrote it, he was quite young. There was this, huge number of young people who started writing and self-publishing, basically. But they would have these writers groups that they would get together and get editing support and so on from. So he says that this actually was in some part based on his own story, right? He was poor. He fell in love with a rich girl.
Oh my!
Unfortunately, he didn't get the happy ending. Right? She was forced to marry someone else.
Yeah.
So then he wrote the novel to kind of give himself the happy ending.
Yes.
And then
a
few years later, he produced a film, the same one, and he plays Muhammad. He plays the. So it's like in the novel and in the film, he gets the girl, right?
Wow.
So yes, there was a film made of that, and so quite a few of the novelists were also directors and actors, producers, and so there's a very tight connection between the Hausa film industry and kind of the Hausa literature. In fact, one of the novelists I love, his stuff the most. I don't know if you've ever read James Hadley Chase.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of
So
Hadley Chase.
Nazir Adam Saleh is a big fan too, and he writes these most amazing Hausa thrillers, but also spiritual thrillers. It's just really good. And he's also a script writer on some of the most popular Hausa TV shows now. So along with Fauzia Di Sulaiman, who's also a novelist, she also writes for television. So there's a really close connection between Hausa literature and film. So in 2006, when I went back, I was meeting novelists, but then I ended up kind of hanging out with filmmakers as well. Of
course, yeah. But the relationship is so good, yeah.
So from there, I went back in 2008, and then I was there for another 3 years. And so when people say my Hausa is good, it suffers when I'm not speaking it. So when I'm in the UK, I'm always happy when I meet Hausa people to practice.
Unfortunately, I cannot. But it's interesting.
But I will say the reason my Hausa was good and is good is that I was sitting with filmmakers So, and you know, in if you're in Jos, people, if you start struggling in Hausa, they'll speak to you in English. Or if you're in Lagos,
yes,
people will speak in English.
Exactly.
But there's Bar ones, you know, if I wanted to speak to them, you know, they were busy doing their work.
Exactly.
Why would they stop and speak to me in English?
Yes,
so to interact with them, my house had just, you know.
were first though.
So it was the filmmakers, it was KRIS, it was the
Yeah.
filmmakers who taught me to speak Hausa. So when, you know, there are certain conservative critics who don't like the film industry, but I say, you know, the reason I'm interested in Hausa culture is because of the films. So that's kind of briefly my story.
So where are you now? Did you end up studying Hausa as a language, or you end up into the cinema or literature? Where did it go?
So the PhD itself was, you know, when I was there in 2006, it was just, there were so many films being made. I was in a garden, I think there were 3 or 4 films being made in the same garden. And you would just drive down the street, you would see people, and in House of Films, they're singing and dancing, at least there used to be singing and dancing, like
so
Indian
like
films,
Indian
Bollywood films.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
So,
we're missing a lot.
Yeah.
Trust me, those in the South, they don't even have a clue of what you're talking about.
Yeah. So you used to see people just, you know, at that time there were achaba or akadas everywhere. So you would take an akada, you would just see people dancing and singing on the side of the road with a camera. So it was just such an exciting time. There was so much creativity, and that's what I wanted to write about. But unfortunately, when I got back in 2008, I finished my PhD exams and so on, and I was ready to start my field work, my research in Nigeria. And unfortunately, there had been a censorship crisis at that time. There had been, unfortunately, an actress who had had a boyfriend who took a phone video of them having sex. And it was a private thing. But you know, this was in 2007. And you know, there were just small cameras. And the video was just, you know, a private thing. But he took the phone for repair, and it got out. And because her face was recognizable, then people started accusing Kanyewood. They're like, oh, you know, this is the first porn film being made by Kanyewood. This is the blue film. So unfortunately, the Kano State Censors Board then shut down everything. So
religion is going to be playing a big part there.
So when I got back, there weren't as many people, you know, people were going out of state to make films, but it was very dry. There was not as much going on in Kano as there had been. So mostly it was editing and so on. So I sat in a lot of editing suites, but I ended up, you know, writing about what I call the politics of exposure in Hausa cultural expression. So where part of the problem, so exposure, if you think about multiple ways of interpreting that word, when you say that you didn't know much about Kanyewood, right, that means that it doesn't have much exposure on the global stage. People know about Nollywood, but they don't know about Kanyewood. So that side of exposure, but also a lot of what kind of religious clerics and so on were afraid of was that they were afraid that the films were exposing vulnerable children. Well, and they say women and children, vulnerable women and children to like corrupting influences. So there's
exposure,
that
exposure.
And then the filmmakers themselves say, well, and what we're doing is exposing corruption, right? We're exposing, if we're showing bad things that are happening, we're actually exposing what's actually happening.
At exposure in that many contexts. All right.
So that word is very useful. It allowed me to kind of explore the many things that were going on in the film industry. But a lot of what I ended up writing about were the controversies at that time. And you know, a lot has happened since I was there, but the censorship crisis became a big part of what I wrote about.
And I don't know how you're able to address that, because right here it will be nothing. It will be considered as two people doing the thing. And even if it happens in film, it's going to be real. We don't care. But I can imagine how it's like there. How are you able to deal with that as an American? I obviously, I know you must have, you understand them. You're able to at least respect the culture of these people. This is their belief. But how are you able to marry that in your own view? Because this is now, as a research, you have to bring out this thing and draw a conclusion. Well, how difficult was it?
You know, I mean, I don't know if I should say this publicly, but part of, you know, I had to do the PhD. That was what was bringing me there. That was giving me the money.
Yeah.
You know, I had the fellowship.
Yeah.
But I'm much more interested in creativity and art. And so I just wanted to be involved with this in any way that I can. And I also, you know, you can see how I'm dressed. I think, you know, Nigerian fashion is beautiful. I always feel much better when tailors will make clothes to fit your body and everything. So I like to fit in as much as possible. You know, it's impossible for me to completely fit in, but if
you're fitting more than me, please don't say that. It's not impossible.
If I can, you know, fit in as much as possible, I just wanted to be a part of, you know, the literature and the film and what was going on. So it was like 3 years of pleasure. I really enjoyed just getting to hang out with people. So but of course the censorship crisis was going on at the time. So at that time in particular, after that sex scandal, the governor at that time, Ibrahim Shekarau, kind of took away the person who was the head of the censors board and put in a new person, Abubakar Rabo Abdul Karim, who really, the way he approached it was he wanted to suppress the film industry. So he would go on the radio, he'd go on TV and say, drive them out. You know?
Wow.
So he was really trying to suppress them. So that, you know, I at that time I was also blogging. So CARMEN.McCAIN.com, I have a blog. So I felt like no one was, you know, I had gone to a few film festivals in Lagos.
Exposure. See, look at where the exposure comes in now.
Exactly. I felt like, okay, it's not getting the exposure that it should be for what's happening here. So like I gone to a few film festivals in Lagos and I told people, look what happened. They're like, that's those common people. You know, they voted for Sharia. So that's what they get. There's this kind of, I mean, and it happens in the North. The North homogenizes the South and the South tends to homogenize the North. And so I just, you know, I was going to court and I was like doing little journalism on my blog. And so really the PhD work then ended up coming out of those 3 years of just interacting with people, and the preoccupation at that time was the censorship crisis. So that ended up being a lot of what I read about. Since then, you know, there have been other things, but the funny thing was at the end of my time there were elections, and so Kwankwaso, I don't know. So he had actually been governor at the time that Sharia came in. But Shekarau said, he would do Sharia better than Kwankwaso, so he campaigned, and he was there for 8 years, and then Kwankwaso came back. And the filmmakers at that time, then they campaigned with him, and he was able to come back. And so it was funny because it was kind of a bookend. You know, he was voted out, and then he came back, and then also, so the censor, the head censor himself was involved in a bit of a scandal that was kind of covered in the press.
Things we all have it. Exposure. What a team you think. Exposure. You know, things are beginning to expose themselves.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
where are you now? Talatu McCain. I know you're a lecturer at the University of London here.
So I'm a lecturer in the School of Languages, Cultures and Linguistics at SOAS, University of London. So a lot of what I teach. So hopefully I don't know if you have yours in the UK. We would love to have more students. We have we have a BA in Africa and the Black Diaspora, and we have an MA program in African Studies. So I convene the MA program in African Studies, and I teach in the BA. So I teach a contemporary African literature. I teach something called Perspectives on African Experience. At the postgraduate level, I teach approaches to African studies. And then I give other guest lectures in film modules and other literature and culture modules. So that's what I do. And we're also trying to get Hausa back. Right now, unfortunately, SOAS doesn't have any West African languages. They did. So Hausa has been taught since the 1930s at SOAS. And there were two, you know, very big professors who, Professor Philip Jagger Professor Gray and Furness, and they both retired. And unfortunately, Professor Furness is fine. Professor Jagger unfortunately died last year. So during COVID, there was, even after his retirement, he was still coming in and teaching, but he had Parkinson's, and so he was, after a while, he wasn't able to come to SOAS and teach anymore. So during COVID, it just stopped. So we're in the process of bringing it back. It will most likely be in collaboration with Bayero University Kano. We'll be doing online, but we're really, hoping that that more students will come and take Hausa, because it's a very big language. After Arabic and Swahili, it's the third largest language.
It's the third most largest spoken language. We have it in Ghana, in Burkina Faso, in Togo. They all
in the Sudan, even there are 4 million people in the Sudan. I think in Gabon. I even met someone the other night that knew someone in Sierra Leone who was Hausa. I'm like, Sierra Leone, I had no idea there were Hausa people in Sierra Leone.
Wonderful. So well, we're going to see the power of languages, and that's some area we might want to look at, because fortunately or unfortunately, our people, is it a colonial thing, brought English language, of course, and when we're in school, you get lashes for speaking vernacular. They call it vernacular. You're not allowed to speak your language. So that was erased from our system. I don't know how it was in the North. So that kind of stops us in a way from having anything to do with our own languages. And I think you can see that it takes a lot. That's why I commend Kano Wood, from what we're going to deal with more on this interview, that they're able to go back home and they make a film in their own languages. And it's different. And so most of the culture, most of these beautiful stories, and now look at this literature you're talking about, they will be different if they are written in English. And if they are written in English, they get to be written in the real source. Sometimes we find, I don't know whether I'm thinking in English or writing in English. Because some of the things my grandfather said to me cannot be, I can try, but you won't get that same texture if I try to say it in English. He said it to me in my language, the depth of it, I may not be able to achieve all if I'm passing it on. So, but unfortunately, we don't understand the use of it. And so you taking on this, and now, if you can bring this up as well as, we'll be ringing the national anthem for people to come and study. It will be very important. For those of you out there, please, if you want to come and study in London, at the University of London, go and ask, just Google it. That is the place where you study African literature, and all is all there, and that is a place where we need to be. You need to be there. Anyway, yes, this is just there. But so people, if you are just joining me, my name is Daddy KRIS, and I am a Talatu. If you don't know the meaning of Talatu, know now. Talatu is if you're born on Tuesday. In Hausa language, they will call it Talatu. Sometimes in other places, they call people Monday, they call some Tuesday, they call some Wednesday. Some people call Thursday. Friday is a common name. Saturday is more. Sunday is the most common. So that's how we name kids, in those days. And that is how she got named Talatu. She's American, she's Hausa, and she speaks Hausa better than me. And of course, I can't even try. So I need to be asking myself if I'm truly Nigerian. Is she not more Nigerian than me? On our way here, I have to make sure I dress like this, because it would be shameful that she is so well dressed, gorgeous, in the language I claim to come from, and I'll be dressing differently. So I decided to join her today. Thank you very much, Talatu. We're very proud of you.
Thank you so much.
All right. So Talatu, let's look at the Kano Wood itself, because you got quite an interesting drama there. With this beautiful story, it is much. But don't you think, how are these people being able to marry this beautiful love story with Islamic culture in their story? I can't wait to look at that. How in your research, how did it play out? Because there you see now a simple tape that got out turned out to be a problem for an entire industry. Just in case you don't know, Kano Wood produces 33% of the film that makes Nollywood. So it's not a small industry, it's huge. If you go and do your research, that's where she's coming from. But then we still have the exposure thing. Yeah? The exposure thing, whichever way it is called, either in the negative that is exposing young people to doing evil things, or actually exposing them to seek the light, or maybe exposing corruption, as they would like to put it. But in your own take, as you watch these movies, don't you think they have limitations in what they could do and what they could not?
So yeah, so the Kano State Censors Board was founded in 2001 when Sharia law was implemented in Kano. You know, you have the National Film and Video Censors Board.
Yes.
But
it wasn't playing there.
And it's relevant to all of Nigeria, but in the Constitution, there's something that says if a state feels like they need a further censors board, they can do it. So initially, when Sharia came in, the film industry was shut down. They banned it. But the filmmakers and heads of the association, I think, including Abdul Karim Mohammed, who spoke with you earlier, they went to the government and said, look, if you can provide us with other occupations, then fine. But they showed how many people are actually employed. You know, people think of just the actors when they see a film, but there's so many. There are costumiers, there are people who feed, there are people who
the extras. If it engages everybody, people selling pure water, they become part of the process.
It's a huge it's a huge industry that employs people. So the government was surprised, and they were also surprised. They said, can these people speak English?
Okay.
They came and they brought this proposal.
Yes.
So they actually themselves proposed what they called a review board. So let the stakeholders come in and make sure that the films aren't offending anyone, and that became the Kano State Censors Board. So under some of the rules of the Censors Board, like men and women cannot touch each other, and so. Sometimes, though, I think when there's censorship, when you're having to get around something, you have to be even more creative to show things. So I think sometimes those songs and dances did things. Personally, I think that films that show so much sex, it's too much, and there's more creative ways of showing that affection. So the singing and dancing, which unfortunately it's not as prevalent as it once was. It used to be you couldn't make a film without singing and dancing. But in those sequences, if you've seen Indian films, you see what happens in those songs and dances.
That takes you to another world.
It expresses the love, right? It can sometimes compress the story. So it will fast forward through the relationship. So at the beginning, they meet each other, the song and dance, and then, they're getting married after the song and dance. So there's a lot of function that those songs and dance have. And a lot of times, they can do things that they don't show the physical intimacy, but they can help develop the story in that way. So I think that's
they're able to get around it.
Yeah.
All right, they have to be more creative. That's something I would like to do, because I'm just thinking, that's a good way, because when you are limited, that's what human beings are good at. When there's no way, we try to find a way, and that is when the creativity comes in.
And I think that, the filmmakers, most of them are Muslims, right? And they consider themselves devout Muslims, even if critics might say that they're, spoiling society or something. So the storylines themselves usually have good morals, right? Like you might show an armed robber, or you might show someone who's rebelling against his parent or something. But normally by the end of the story, you see what happens to that person, right? So the filmmakers would often respond to the critics, being like, "Well, how can we show this story if we can't show the we can't show the sin happening?"
Exactly.
Right? So that was kind of most of the stories themselves were good messages. They were promoting Islamic values. But they were showing bad things that happened too. So that was the tension between the people who were criticizing them.
And I can already tell you that the platform is full. This young man is intrigued, and it's good to hear from them. And he said, obviously, she's more Nigerian than me. Thank you so much for that. He said, this is the first time, you see, to the schoolboy, who said, this is the first time I'll see a foreigner so passionate about Nigeria. it shocked me self. That is amazing. Thank you so much. And you're going to get more and more of this. And what we're saying is, this woman is not only in Nigeria, she's actually propagating it. And from the core side of Nigeria, where you think, what are you doing there? I will understand if you grow up in Lagos and you have this affinity for Nigeria, but you grow up in the north, where I want to say there's this when it's Sharia law. Let's go there. For those of us, we're scared of it. Even those of us in the South, I don't understand it because of the way. Well, because I'm a product of a society. I'm a product of the South, and it takes me time to understand what the North is saying about certain things, especially because of religious background. And sometimes I just say, I don't agree. But yeah, you're a woman in them. Are you able to fit in and actually fall in love and find your way and create a PhD? We're coming back to that another day. But let's look at the storytelling pattern first. Nollywood, which comes to Kannywood now. How do you see the way we tell stories as Africans? Because sometimes I just say, I did my master's in films and television, and my dissertation was on heavy dialogue approach. We just talk, we cut into a scene, it's two people talking, boom, boom, boom. So the scene is, sometimes I just say, but why are these people sitting down and talking? Why can't they just do it? Why are they, you understand? But
there's a lot of living rooms.
Exactly. It's on the living room. Come to this living room. Come to the next living room. Come to the next. I say, hey, can we create a scene, that can actually tell the story without the full-blown dialogue? But how do you find that as an expert in this field?
I mean, Nollywood has created its own conventions and its own aesthetic values and genres, right? So the Nollywood became so popular because people wanted to watch that, and they found it familiar. And there are a lot of filmmakers who are doing different things now. But I think the dialogue that's a certain style that Nollywood has.
Okay, we'll say Nollywood created that style, all right? And as long as people are with it, so what? There's this conventional way, right or wrong. That's what you're trying to say.
But I think, there's also a new generation of filmmakers who are, like any film industry, the next generation comes along and wants to do something new.
Definitely.
So you have people like Kenneth Gyang, who actually is from Jos, right? Abba Makama from Jos.
All right.
I love this Jos contingent that you have. There's this exciting group.
What you're talking about, in fact, I can tell you, even 90% of those in Nollywood don't even know what you know about the Kannywood. And this is something we really need to query ourselves. That we have such a brother industry, such a sister industry by there on our shoulder, working with us side by side, and we don't know anything about it.
Yeah, well, Kenneth Gyang is in Nollywood, right? He's made Blood Sisters. He made Ola Toure and so on. So you have people like Ali Nuhu, right?
Ali Nuhu,
he was described to me as the Shah Rukh Khan of Kannywood, right? He was the main, mega star.
Okay.
In Kannywood, but he also acts in Nollywood.
Yeah, he was in this beautiful movie we made here in London, Last Flight to Abuja. That's made by one of our boys, Obi did that beautiful film. And the way he came into the story. And that's what Obi did. And I was really thanking him to bring in that Kannywood, because perhaps I'm even begging them now, this need to either do the casting, do some stories, and perhaps introduce our languages in between the story. It won't hurt if it's not completely made in Hausa. But even if you make it will you give me the opportunity to speak my language once in a while?
Yeah, there are quite a few films where Kannywood starts. So, for example, Lionheart, right? You have Sani Mwazu and Yakubu. So, they're acting the Hausa characters there. So, Yakubu Muhammad and Sani Mwazu. And other, there are quite a few films where they've got. In fact, Ali Nuhu, he went to university in Jos, and then I think he did his NYSC, or anyway, he went to Lagos, and he was actually acting in Nollywood films before he went
back to because that's
became big in Kano.
Yes, so, that's what the NYSC will do: send you to some part of the country where you have no idea. So if you're going to be there, you're going to be. If you're going to act, then you act with them, and that gives you another exposure. That's what I commend the Nigerian NYSC for. Amazing stuff. Listen, for those of you just joining me, you can see it's not different. She's not different from us. She's not. She's one of us. And I don't know what to recommend. I'm just excited, and I'm really privileged to have this interview with you because you represent something different. And I'm going to come to that towards the end of the show. But let's still look at our industry first, film. And where do you think, or what do you think Kannywood and Nollywood can take us to as a nation?
I'll tell the story that I've been telling everyone since. So I went to Nigeria twice this summer, and I flew into Lagos on Air France last month.
Okay.
And
just last month. Yeah.
Just last month. It was,
okay.
No, not Air France. KLM. I was on a KLM flight flying into Lagos, and so the pilot or the head flight attendant.
Yes.
As we were landing, they said, "Welcome to Lagos, home of one of the world's largest film industries."
Wow.
Right. And I never, there's you're talking about how people are ashamed in Nigeria or how Nigeria has a bad reputation. And Lagos, there are news articles that Lagos armed robbery and bad traffic and corruption, blah 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 blah. This was a film industry, and it was just
beautiful.
It was so beautiful.
I wish they can throw some of these movies in their flight. You see, these are some of the things we'll be begging them to do. If you're going to fly us,
they do.
Just put on some of the movies.
There are some movies there. I was watching some of them.
Nollywood movies there.
There's usually at least 3 or 4 Nollywood movies on the in-flight selection.
Wow. Wow. Because that's something, because that cross-cultural understanding, it will help a lot. Like, back to the question, where this is some of the things Nollywood does for us. And you're an expert in films, and so you understand even the economic value, what Nollywood can do.
If you think of Nigerian economy, what drives the Nigerian economy? It's mostly petrol, right?
Yeah.
That it's coming out of the ground, it's destroying people's, it ends up making a few people very rich, and then it ends up destroying the Niger Delta.
That's it.
So
destroy others. In fact, destroy our sense of creativity. We no more, if you see, unfortunately, this is not a political platform, but when you see Nigerians, we live on, how would I call it? Let me use it as it is, Nigerian today, they take oil from the soil, sell it. When the money comes, they share it. And our individual capabilities, or what individual could do to contribute to the nation, is completely ignored. All we're waiting is for that small oil money, which is not enough. And sometimes that's why there's still heavy poverty in the land, and the few, of course, who have.
So I think Nollywood and the music. The music industry has done even more.
More now.
I think
our friend said now. I just cannot understand where these kids are coming from.
I was on the Northern Line.
Okay.
Last year, and I heard these white kids singing Afrobeats. They were singing in pidgin. There wasn't any Nigerian among them. There were white British kids. And I was like, look at this. This is the power of cultural expression and of music. And
that understanding immediately comes in. Then there's culture now merge, and people, when they see somebody from Nigeria now, they're going to say, "Hey, you're one of us. I'm one of you," because the music has already connected us. All right.
So I think that what Nollywood has done without any assistance, right? And even with government suppression in some cases, they've been able to create a narrative about Nigeria that it's no longer the 419 whatever. It's the home of the largest film industry in the world. That's how people are introduced to it, flying into Lagos. And so fashion and music and film and literature, right? So there's so much. Nigeria, most people are so talented and good and amazing, and it's just the stupid criminals. Which with over 200 million people, of course they're going to be criminals, right? Like any population is going to have its criminals.
There will be.
Unfortunately, that Nigeria has gotten a bad name because of the criminals. But if the media focused on the criminality in London. Then all the stabbings and
exactly.
So
we just went through one. We just went through one overnight, and I just couldn't turn on my television to watch that horrible news. And I wasn't ready to talk about it because it's too depressing. That's not the kind of thing we see in London. But of course, unfortunately, if it's Nigeria, it will be on the top line. But that's not to say that we have our peculiar problems, And I really pray that Nollywood help to address that internally as well. And so we're going to come to bad representation in film, and I have that issue with Nollywood filmmakers. I say, okay, there are things you can do, there are things you cannot do. Sometimes I want to agree with the censor board that you can't do this, you can't sell us, we are negative enough. But hey, what are they supposed to talk about? They're supposed to talk about the East in society. So, and that's the exposure we're talking about.
Exactly. I mean, I think that was a lot, especially, I mean, all of Nollywood has had its critics, right?
Yeah.
Kannywood has, has had an extra level. But if you look at a lot of the early criticism, when people are ashamed of it, they're like, oh, they're showing us in a bad light, oh,
Yes.
it's bad production values,
Yes,
et cetera.
Mhm.
But I mean, if you look at some of those stories that are showing Nigeria in a bad light, they're exposing certain issues, and
Yes.
I mean, some of it's fantastic, right? So you should show, living in bondage shows, selling
Yes.
your soul to the devil or something. But those are the sorts of stories that you hear people telling, right? If you're sitting around, even in church, right?
Yes.
Where people will talk about how, the mummy watched it, they were living with
Yes.
the spirit for
You have
50
to
years.
have all these languages.
And they knew someone who was the secretary of the devil and so on.
Yes.
I heard that in church in Port Harcourt.
Okay.
Right? So, and then you see that in the film.
In the
So
films.
what the films are showing is not any different from
From
what
what they say.
the ordinary people on the street are talking about. So, and that's why it connected so well with the audience in Nigeria. So if it's showing Nigeria in a bad light, it's what people are watching and connecting with.
Yes.
So
it's difficult to tell them, don't do this, do that.
Yeah.
We'll come to that, and we'll find a thin line, because, like I said, the reputation of the country is in trouble. Unfortunately, CARMEN, one of the most shameful things we should just mention is that all these are done without the support, without any form of support. You understand? And I really don't understand where my leaders, or what they understand with this.
Well, I mean, there has been, there was Project Action Nollywood. So I know if you, for example, Abba Makama made Green, White, Green, the Surreal 16, which is this exciting young kind of group of 3 filmmakers who are making kind of art films. There are certain people who got some of that money, but I think even more important than the government funding films would be just providing an enabling environment, right?
Yes.
So, for example, electricity.
Exactly.
If there was stable electricity people didn't have to worry about the gin running in the background
and making the heavy noise,
making the noise,
and because that's the problem you deal with when you have that heavy noise. How do you record the sound?
Yeah, so the noise, and then having to run it all the time. So I think some of those are the sorts of things that the government could do to create a more enabling environment. And I think now that it has recognized the power of it, there has been more, the government hasn't been quite as critical as it.
Yeah, they've not, because the truth is Nollywood has produced stars that if they say something, it resonates with everybody. If a Nollywood star will make a statement about anybody in the country politically, that person will be in trouble. You understand? So I think the government now understand the power of these guys, and knowing that they cannot control them that much, they sometimes want to get them into what they're doing. You need to see what is currently happening in the Nigerian politics during the elections. You see them buying them, giving them some millions of naira just to come and be in their camp. And I'm watching, I'm saying, hey, guys, you're selling your conscience to the devil,
True. I mean, Nollywood stars are not saints. Right? Some of them are involving themselves into the
they're doing it now. They're doing it. Well, we're not going to judge you today, because I guess some of you are trying to survive. But don't forget that where you're coming from, you all can do better, because the industry needs you to now make it better than where you met it. Well, for those of you just joining us, I'm not going away yet. I have a lot of 2 other minutes, 2 more questions to share with her, and that is going to be mostly the political angles of film, the politics of films, representations of films, historical filmmaking, and that is where she's going to be able to really tell us, as a people, what should be more injected. Because that is going to be my next question. What do you want to see more in our movies? What would you like to see?
I think the films that I love the most are the ones that reflect the reality of life. The ones that make me kind of tired are the glitzy, glamorous, lucky VI.
Exactly.
That kind of soap opera-esque
exactly.
stuff.
Unfortunately, I just watched now. Let me tell you one funny thing. All our stars, all our movie stars now, they're now answering 2 English names. And they abandon the names. And I have nothing against it. So, and one of the things perhaps that makes me tired as well is I can tell you that none of them will want to be in their own language movies. Like the Igbos, I don't see them playing their own films. The Hausas are doing a little bit better. They have their own industry. Igbo try to do something, but they're not really there. I know they have a station on television where they show Igbo films. The Yorubas really have an industry. So they've been around for quite some time.
I mean, the Yoruba at one time was 70% of the industry. They had a huge number of films. And you know, I mean, like Lancelot Emerson and Song and others have been making Nigerian language films, and I think there's a small Urhobo industry, right?
Our industry now is called Urhobo. It's so quite funny. You need to see that. They made one or two films. And
then Bini
are doing their own things.
There's T films. There's well, of course, there's Hausa. So the big three, Hausa, Igbo, and Yoruba. But yeah, there are other. You know, if you look at the Census Board statistics, there are some being submitted, and in fact, I think those tend to be more popular with the grassroots audiences,
of course,
right? Because they're in
my language. My grandmother can watch it. They don't need to struggle. They are not, and the actors sometimes do better because they're speaking in the language they're more comfortable with. And the advantage of it for me is, you've just exposed me to another language. Today I'm speaking Talatu. I've learned that. Somebody speaking Hausa now, I fall more in love with it. Films can help us to bridge this political gap that is often created. And that is why I think if these people, if they give us, this is what I think. When we, as a nation, unfortunately, is deeply divided by, say, the South are Christians and the North are Muslims. What is missing is the component of the South and the North. The language, Hausa, is the language that I would like to talk about the Hausa people rather than them as Muslims.
Yeah, I mean, everyone are people, right? Everybody, they're just people. And when you see stories that you can connect with, you realize, oh, it's not just that Hausa guy, you know, the stupid Megadi or the evil Boko Haram.
Exactly.
They're ordinary people living ordinary lives. The same thing, you know, if you watch a Nollywood film, if you're Hausa, you see. So I think that the stories do these cynical narratives that politicians use when they're trying to get into office. They tend to use this indigent settler language. This is a foreigner. The Igbo shouldn't be in Lagos, right? Or the Hausa shouldn't be in Jos. This or the Jos people shouldn't be in Kano. So I mean, that's a very cynical use that most ordinary people, if you have a neighbor who's a Muslim and you're a Christian, or is Igbo and you're Hausa, you usually, unless you're a mean person, right? You get along with your neighbor.
Go to the barracks. Go to Nigerian barracks, the military barracks, the police barracks. You see the Hausa, the Muslims and the Christians, the Igbos, and if they live together, they're just the same people. You know, that's why I organize the Nigerian Week. Nigerian Week for me is an opportunity for you to throw down your language on the side. I want you to keep it because that's what we're going to exhibit. But you're going to put it aside. We want to exhibit it as we celebrate as one Nigeria. That is why I actually come up with that stuff.
As you interact, as you watch people's stories, and you realize, okay, maybe this caricature I had
about them.
Yeah, you know, I mean, even me when I first went to Sokoto to learn Hausa, I was coming from Jos, and the narrative then, because of Sharia and everything, was that in Sokoto you need to completely wear, cover up everything. The first thing I saw when I got into Sokoto was this girl in a spaghetti strap on the back of an Okada, right? So you know, these
so they can do that.
These stories that
women are allowed to do that.
I saw it now.
Oh my God!
So I mean, I think these stories that I mean that's partly why Nollywood is so popular in the Caribbean and other parts of Africa, right?
Yes.
People are seeing stories that they recognize, even though it's in Nigeria.
Yes.
You know, I was teaching a Hausa film, Maria, directed by Ali Hu, written by Fauzia Di Suleiman, in one of the film classes at SOAS.
Yes.
And I had some Somali and Tanzanian students there, and they loved the film.
Of course.
They're like, oh, this reminds me so much of our our own society. So I was like, God, they need to start subtitling things in
So
Swahili
that
or Somali.
people can
They have a
understand
bigger
it.
audience. Yeah. So,
Amazing.
and I mean, I think if you look at African Magic, you know, it's all over the continent, but even those African Magic Hausa, African Magic Yoruba, they're accessible beyond Nigeria,
Yeah,
and people watch it. So it's the stories that people can connect with. I think sometimes they say this about Shakespeare, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes when you're the most specific, it's the most universal.
That's true.
You tell the story that's relevant
to you,
to your mother and the person
yeah.
on the street,
Yes.
and then people
Before
will
you know
connect
it,
with
yes, because
it's a human
it's a
connection.
human story, and I think we are all the same. We all go through the same thing. We fall in love. We have issues. There's all this. They'll be crying. They'll be good. They'll be bad in every society. And these things, by the time you reveal it from your point of view, you might think you're doing something. Hey, it's still happening in the next door. We are all the same. We're human, and that is what film exposes, and it brings in that unity that we are one and the same. By the way, I'm going to go on a quick break, but before I go, I really want to read some of the comments here. I'm enjoying it. Cool boy. Let listen to some of your comments because you're making us proud tonight. He said the Nigerian government inherited ideological conception of the cinema, which is why they neglect the future filmmaking. Okay. And let's not forget, distribution channels remain under the control of foreign organizations with no interest in promoting African films. I don't know whether the African Magic is doing their own bit. I always say, this is what I might challenge to the Nigerian government, which is some of the things they could have done. I don't know why we don't have a YouTube channel, or if it's a channel for this, if the government of Nigeria can create. No, I say to them, it's okay to put a film on Netflix, but I would have loved a situation where Nigerian are able to create a platform where they distribute their own film.
You know, there's Iroko TV.
Yeah,
there's Iroko TV, which apparently Netflix looked at and modeled and then stole all their
everything. And now Netflix have it. Iroko is gone because, to be fair to Iroko, they don't have the financial muscles to fight Netflix. And filmmakers will go and drop the film at Netflix.
You know, it is a shame. Well, and certain filmmakers are putting things on YouTube and they're making quite a lot of money. But of course, YouTube is still, it's owned by Google, isn't it?
Yeah,
right?
yes, Google.
One of the largest multinational corporations in the world. So it is interesting to me that Nollywood, which started as a grassroots thing, right? They didn't have support. They didn't have international funding. They created
there was no international distribution. They were fine. They were distributing DVDs or CDs, and we were doing great. Today, I listen to them. You're proud. I'm a filmmaker. I make my film. I put it in Netflix. And the implication is, Nigerians will produce a product. We go and put it in Netflix, and we are now watching our own product. They've been sold back to us.
People are having to now buy the data and buy the Netflix to access the films. Yeah,
your own product, and
even some of them are available in the US, are available in the UK. They're not available in Nigeria.
Oh my God!
Yeah,
may God help all of us. So let's follow this one, and let's not forget, that distribution channel remain under the control of foreigners with no interest in. Okay, but watching this beautiful woman now has changed my narrative, and I am very, very glad. I couldn't be more glad than you. All right, young man, I am proud of you, and we will go on a quick break. Don't go away. We'll come back. It's an hour into the show. I didn't want to take out more than that, but I have one or two more questions just to share this beautiful moment with her before I'll let her go. And for those of you who's just joining us, I'm going to repeat her name when we come back. Her name is Talatu. Do you know the meaning of Talatu in Hausa language? It means you are born on Tuesday. All right, Talatu, CARMEN, McCAIN. If you don't know who is McCAIN, when I remember during the Obama election, it was Obama and McCAIN. So you cannot forget. There's nothing to forget about this name. This woman is nobody. You don't forget about her easily. And that is the truth about you. And I'm really proud. I'm privileged to be in your midst today. And I call it, I'm in the presence of greatness. Let's go on a break. Don't go away. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Looking for a home away from home in Abuja? Look no further than SRTV Shortlet Apartments. Our fully furnished apartments offers everything you need for a comfortable and relaxing stay. Unwind in spacious rooms with exquisite ambience. Cook delicious meals in our well-equipped kitchen and relax in our comfortable sitting rooms watching your favorite shows. And guess what? 247 Wi-Fi available. But that's not all. SRTV goes extra mile by providing a car to take you around town during your stay. No need to worry about navigating public transportation or hailing taxis. Explore Abuja at your own pace. Book your SRTV Shortlet apartment today and experience the perfect blend of comfort and convenience. You can reach us by calling this number 070-6237-9915 or 080-7082-7331.
All right, you're welcome back. This is the World of Cinema with Daddy Chris, and my host, my guest today is the one you have never seen before. Her name is Talatu, which means she's an Hausa girl. All right, Talatu means born on Tuesday. CARMEN McCAIN. She's right here with me. She's doctor. She's senior lecturer at the University of London. Yeah, and she's right here with me. No, I'm gonna. For those of you who be joining us, if you've not been following us, we're gonna go back and watch that. But right now, I want to focus on her. Miss McCain, Dr. McCain, I want to ask this question: what do you really love about Nigeria? What have been your experiences? I know you've gone into the cinema world, living there as a woman, as a lady studying there. What have been your experiences associating with us? I know there have been some good, some bad, and some sweet ones. What are they?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up partially. So I was 11 so I'd had my formative childhood years in the U.S.
Okay.
But then being an adolescent in Nigeria, I went to the university in the U.S. and I just felt like I wanted to understand my relationship to Nigeria.
Yeah.
So that's when I ended up studying.
Yes.
I came back. So I had lived in a very international world as a teenager. I went to an international school. And so I wanted to just see what is life outside of,
Yes.
of school. And so I think the first thing that I really loved was just literature, right?
Okay.
When I went back to Nigeria on Fulbright in 2001, I went to an Association of Nigerian Authors conference or convention in Port Harcourt.
Okay.
And I found there a self-published collection of stories, prison stories, that was actually Waiting for an Angel by Halan Habila. So it ended up, the first story in that collection won the CAIN Prize for African Writing. I think it was the second year that it was running. And then it was later published as a novel, Waiting for an Angel. And I just loved that novel so much. Waiting for an Angel. And that's why I ended up writing my master's thesis on it. But I think what I've always loved has been just the creativity in the story. And I've always been somebody who likes just hearing gossip, right?
Right.
And when I moved from Port Harcourt to Jos,
Yeah.
I had a sleepover with some of my friends
Yes.
from the school. And I didn't know the school at all. I hadn't started going yet. I was just spending the night with this group of 5 women who are actually still my closest friends. We have a WhatsApp group.
Good.
But they were just gossiping, right?
Yeah.
They're just gossiping. And I just love
Gossip.
sitting around and hearing stories from
Yes.
people. And Nigerians are very good at
Yeah, we're
gossip.
gossip. We're gossip.
And that's Nollywood. Those
Yes,
are the
of course,
novels.
that's what-
So I think my relationship to Nigeria has often been story and wanting to hear stories, write about stories. Blogging. I was blogging. I haven't touched my blog in a while.
Bring it back.
But
Bring it back.
no, I
Bring
need
it
to.
back.
I need
Bring
to.
it back.
Everyone
Please
says
bring
that.
it back.
So
Please be interested. I will want to follow.
yeah.
We want to follow.
So, but just I think story is a big part, and then language too,
Yes.
right? Once I started learning Hausa better, I realized, you just feel like you fall below the. When I was just speaking English, going to international school, I felt like I was just living on the surface of society. Once you just speak language, people are just saying ordinary things, but you understand.
Then you can
So,
flow. They see you as one of them. But that being said, you are really one of them. Look at your clothes. That's one of those things I wonder, like, how did you see the African fashion? And number 2, food. Have you been able to cope with our kind of food?
So fashion. I mean, I always feel more comfortable. I feel better about myself when I'm in Nigerian clothes, right?
And you're in London.
When
the funniest thing, she's in London.
Nigeria,
Look at her.
yeah.
Look at her. I do cope with this? Even in London, how do you go about with this?
Well, I mean, sometimes people look at you funny, like, what is this
Who's
white person
coming from?
doing? Why
Exactly.
are they? So I'm, in the American and UK context, I have to choose. Usually, I'll wear them when I go to Africa events because I know there are people who
understand that.
Or sometimes I have them made in styles that are
Yes,
you can wear anywhere.
more that's cross.
But yeah, no, I fashion is a way of expressing yourself, and you can meet together with a designer. And Nigeria has so many very
They're
talented.
growing,
I have a very talented
Wow.
designer named Valerie
Wow.
in Joss, and she makes most of my clothes. She's great. Food.
Yes.
Food.
Come to food.
I love Nigerian food, and I think my favorite is masa damian toshi. So it's do you know masa? They often serve it with suya.
Yes.
But the way I like eating it is there's a mian toshi. It's a soup that you eat it with. So you it's like pounded yam, but you put it inside the soup. But the soup just kind of soaks in the masa. So the masa, is like it's made with these iron griddles.
Yes.
So you pour it in, and it's like a pancake.
Yeah.
So I love that so much. Yes,
you do with fingers.
Yeah.
And you do that.
Yes.
Oh my God.
And I think the best masa is the Bauchi masa. They're known for the best masa. Zaria as well.
Wow.
But that's always what I look for when I go back. That's my favorite. But then pounded yam, egusi soup.
Yeah. That's the universal one.
That's what I had the other night. I think
at this Banker's restaurant.
Banker's kitchen.
Oh, I missed that.
Was so good. Yeah.
Really? Oh my God. And now they popularize this jollof rice so much. I don't know.
Yes.
Wow. And look at that. I need to read this comment. Wow. All outside people, please gather here. Something interesting is going on. It cannot be better than this. I wish, to be honest, what you have done, you are, I don't know, you are like somebody sent. When the world is tending to be falling on you, God will always give you somebody that you just come to do that in us. You really help us in a way that people, what you're doing is you're giving a true representation of another part of Nigeria which the world is not aware of. And we cannot sell that narrative. You're helping to do it because you are independent, you have nothing to lose, and you're saying it for what it is. And I don't think anybody can pay for this. We'll come more on that. I'm going to come back to one little thing now before I promise I will let you leave. I'll let you go home because it's getting late. And that becomes your. Do you see yourself going back to Nigeria?
No, I try to go back at least once a year. And I was teaching in California from 2016 to 2022. And in part, I made the move to London because it's so much closer. So since I've been here, I've been able to go back a lot more. And it's
6 hours.
From California, it's a long trek.
Trust me.
So I try to get back as much as, and I would love it if I could end up in Nigeria.
Yes, please.
When I finished the PhD, I taught at Kwara State University for a year and a half before I got the job in California. And it was in Ilorin, so I got to know Ilorin in the West, and I enjoyed it. But I did feel, because I don't speak Yoruba, I felt again like I was on the surface of things again. Yeah.
God, no time to go.
So I needed to learn I started, but I left before I was able to go very far.
Wow.
So. But I think I would want to be back in Joss. There's something about Joss. It's like your heart.
Yeah, that's where you grow up. It's like that place where you are. Your tie, your thing is there.
I think. So many people I know from Joss. Joss is just in their heart.
It's beautiful land. And then you see, this is the sad thing about our story. You see these beautiful Joss. And all we hear from Joss is really this attack on innocent people. We see these terrible images and you wonder, who are these people?
I think the thing for me about Joss, and this is another academic project that I want to do, it seems like Jos in some ways is the ideal of what Nigeria could be. There's so much creativity. If you look at so many artists, so many musicians, filmmakers, storytellers have come out of Jos.
I'm happy that the Nigerian Film School is in Jos. It's not by
Film
accident.
Corporation, a film school, TV college, you know, it was imagined as kind of the center of film in Nigeria. So it's, and there's just so much, you know, creativity and mixing of people from all over Nigeria, because, you know, there are people from the south, people from the north, they're all mixing, and it created that culture in Jos. And now, unfortunately, Jos, so it's the best of what Nigeria could be, it's also the worst of it, because these crises that have been going on since 2001, the killings that are going on in the outskirts. So it's just, it's really, it's a terrible thing, because I know there's so many people who used to love to go to Jos, and now they're afraid to go because of all of these things happening.
Quite a cool place, and nice, beautiful weather. Well, anyway, that brings us to this is the last bit of it, is that you find that the cinema, you've had a lot of experience, you've gone through our literature, you've gone through the culture itself, and now you see it being represented in movies. Don't you expect more? That we can do more than what we're doing at the moment?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's amazing how much has been done in the last, what is it, since the 1980s, the last 40 years, right? Nigeria has become one of the largest film industries in the world. So I think sometimes the new film, especially like the Netflix film, and this is where, on the one hand, I think it's something to be celebrated that these stories are now available to, you know, I can now ask my students to just watch Netflix. I don't have to find a VCD somewhere. So that, I think it's exciting that it's global, it's international, it's on the global stage. At the same time, it worries me a bit that this intensely independent film industry is now, you know, kind of been captured by Netflix. And I think sometimes the stories that those sorts of platforms look for, or they give people a formula to write, and it feels like it's losing some of the heart. And so I think, I mentioned the films that I like the most are those that show. So, I mean, sometimes they show the VI side, right? But then they show like the people speaking in pidgin, the mechanics, and so on.
Just like the reference, just the representation.
The way that people live their lives, right? So I think those are those. There's so many stories in Nigeria, over 200 million people, right? And each person has stories that they can tell. So I think Nigeria's wealth is story. You know, the oil in some ways is a blessing and a curse, right? But the story is something that will not run out.
Exactly.
And that, I mean, it can be exploited, but you know, everyone has a story to tell. So I think I would like to see more of that, and I would like to see more. So, for example, in the North, I think part of the problem is because it's a conservative society, there aren't as many people producing or funding films as there are in the South. So it's made it a little bit harder for them to get to that level. But so I think there is a need probably for script writers to study script writing a little bit more, right? Because sometimes there are stories that the idea is good, but then it's not implemented.
No, it's not in the story. It's lost in the story.
That's what I sometimes see in the films that are available on Netflix. But there's some excellent writers.
And where I don't know the level of representation now, which is one of those things, which is really the last bit I worry you before I let you go. It's sensitive, but we have to look at it. When I look at the way the African culture is represented in our films, it's kind of surprised me. Or sometimes it's an insult to my forefathers, because they come to see that anything that is in the Christian fold, especially in the South, anything that is not Christianic is barbaric. And that is how they portray it in the film, without a thorough understanding of why people engage in those practices. It might not be right, it might be wrong, but this were a practice, and there must be an understanding. And even if, as a filmmaker, you're trying to draw a line and taking side that you believe this is the right way to go, the way you should present this true, you should be able to tell the story from what it's been practiced, and this is deep. And I know there's a lot, there's some areas of it that is so difficult to touch upon, which I would dare not, but the representations in the films, the way the African culture, which you have seen, being represented, especially I'm sure in the North, if you represent it that is not Islamic, you probably get into serious trouble.
Yeah, that's true. I think the Yoruba film industry has done a better job of that, right? If you look at the films that they were doing in the 70s and 80s from the traveling theater, I think there was less demonization of the African culture, kind of African, traditional religion and that sort of thing. It is true that a lot of Christian films have kind of demonized.
Oh yes, if you're not Christian, in fact, there's a way they do it, and then the devil will be the will be the African traditional person. Because without proper understanding of what I am, nothing against I'm a Christian. I grew up in this, but to see that something you don't understand, or maybe you didn't you didn't ask your parents to do, you just come up, pick up a camera, and you represent the people in that fashion. It's kind of.
And the same thing happens in Kannywood, right? So that you see a boka with feathers in his hair and cackling like a madman. And so I think that is something that both Muslims and Christians have tended to represent people who are not Muslims and Christians, or even there are Christians and Muslims who are practicing some of those cultural things. But you're right, it isn't represented well all the time, but there are, so for example, I mentioned the Surreal 16. They're a group of young filmmakers, and CJ Obasi, I don't know if you heard about Mami Wata.
Mami Wata, yes.
Did you see it?
Yeah, I did not see the film. Okay. But yes, I think Princess actually had an interview with the maker.
CJ Obasi.
Yes.
So there are some, they're more intellectual filmmakers who are trying to kind of retrieve and bring back respect for
it. You may not agree with it, but let it be truly represented, because the difference between good and evil can be debated, and that's what filmmakers are supposed to be doing in some of the works. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm gonna I don't know when I'll have the chance to have this lady again, but I'm gonna give the last comment from this. Say, just imagine if every Nigerian loved the country like this, or even have the interest of Nigeria the way she does. The country would be far better than every other nation. I wish everyone can watch this.
Inshallah.
Thank
we
you.
Praise so.
Thank you so much. He has said it all. I cannot even thank you enough. And it's not me talking now. It's the audience talking. And I'm not sure there's going to be more and more people talking about this. Please, what I'm going to beg you is please come back to this studio again. And then we want to see how we can be part, we can come and tap on the knowledge available at your universities. We'll be putting that on this show. I'll be doing a lot with you on that to see how Africans, our Nigerian students, can actually come and benefit from what you're doing.
Yeah, we would, what we need a whole lot more collaboration between the university and African communities.
Definitely. So, and we have them here and we have them at home. And I'm very sure a lot of them that watch this alone, you see, you've inspired something different. And I don't think if anybody is afraid, who is ashamed to be Nigerian, have a reason not to be now.
I want to become Nigerian. I want to be a citizen. So don't be ashamed.
See, that's a good thing. So that's where we're going to end the show. Thank you very much for joining me this evening. And it cannot be better than this, people. We're going to call it a wrap at this junction. And this is the world of cinema. There's more to this woman than just cinema. Her name is Dr. Dalatu CARMEN McCAIN. She is a lecturer at the University of London here teaching African Studies. To say that. And her love for the Hausa language, for Nigeria, and her understanding, the deep understanding of our literature, now manifesting to films, is something that we need to celebrate. I wish I can take her back to Nigeria. I call it a brain drain because she should be there, making a lot of difference. But the question is, are you guys going to welcome her? I hope so. I didn't want to ask her the last question. I wanted to ask her, will you marry a Nigerian? That was the question I wanted to ask. You understand? That was the last question I was going to ask.
So,
and I'm not forced to ask.
What God knows. Of course, I would marry one if the right person came along.
Thank you. So if you're the right guy, there she's there. What it is it will be a pleasure. It will be a privilege. In fact, it will be a big, big plus to a nation if we can get her back home. And one of the best ways to do that is to let's keep her home. All right, so we need you back there. All right. Thank you very much for being on the show with me. And like I said, I'm going to see you again and again on this in London. We're going to be working together.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
All right. So that's what we call it a wrap tonight. As you see, the time is late. And for those of you who wanted to join tonight, help to share this video, share it to the right people. And I'll be doing my best as well. Thank you so much for joining me. Nigeria, be proud of who you are. She's here. She speaks Hausa. Can you speak Hausa? She speaks Igbo. Can you? She come all the way from the US and she's sticking into this. She got her Hausa right. Now, in the course of teaching at the Lorry, she's trying to pick up the Yorubas. Mm-hmm. How many of us really get interested in that language? How do you think we can do that? Please, Wood, keep up what you're doing. Yoruba filmmaking, be there. And Igbo, do your thing. And every other nation should do their own so that we can interact. Through the world of cinema, I'm sure when you read my story, when you watch my movie, you'll be, by implication, you'll be picking one or two languages from there. And that is one way to go. Her name, again, is Talatu. She's born on a Tuesday. We should be celebrating Tuesday. One day, I never take seriously Tuesday. From today, Tuesday is the day I'll take serious. Thank you very much for joining me. Until we see you again. Good night. Yes.
Looking for a home away from home in Abuja? Look no further than SRTV Shortlet Apartments. Our fully furnished apartments offers everything you need for a comfortable and relaxing stay. Unwind in spacious rooms with exquisite ambience. Cook delicious meals in our well-equipped kitchen and relax in our comfortable sitting rooms watching your favorite shows. And guess what? 247 Wi-Fi available. But that's not all. SRTV goes extra mile by providing a car to take you around town during your stay. No need to worry about navigating public transportation or hailing taxis. Explore Abuja at your own pace. Book your
SR